to compensation and other form of reparations to the victims of 1998 bomb blast. I want to thank Senator Kavindu Mudhama for the wonderful work she has done, and I want to also thank the Liaison Committee led by the chairperson, Senator Katuri Murungi, for approving the formation of ad hoc. I know it has not been easy for her. She has been restless, Madam Speaker, for better part of late last month and this month, and I'm happy I can see finally there is a smile on her face, not only on her face, but the victims of bomb blast of 1998 here in Nairobi and in Arusha, Madam Speaker. Senator Kavindu, she knows the role I played. We have been consulting. In fact, Madam Speaker, one of my constituents from Nandi Hills, by the name Jackson Mutahi, lost a brother during the 1998 bomb blast, and they come from a place near Keteng in Nandi Hills sub-county or Nandi Hills constituency in Nandi County. When she saw this when he saw this motion, he called me and told me, as our senator, we depend on you because we lost a brother that day. So 224 victims dead, more than 4,500 Kenyans, both foreign and local Kenyans, were also injured. But as Speaker, it's sad 24 years later, we are still talking about compensation of the victims. Madam Speaker, at that time, I was not so conscious enough to know what was happening. But 24 years later, I was not even started my primary school. I was just starting my primary school, Madam Speaker. And yet we are still discussing about the compensation. I want to appeal to the State Department of US. And you know, this is the price we are paying, Madam Speaker, for being friends with the Americans. They say friendship is expensive. And one of the instances is now. I have seen in situations where American citizens have been injured. They have always demanded compensation. You remember Gaddafi compensated America over what happened with the plane that was brought down, Madam Speaker. You remember even the Sudan, although it is in crisis, to the economic sanctions to be removed, they had to pay compensation to the lives of Americans that were lost in Sudan in those years. We want to ask the great people of America, and they have a tremendous cordial relationship with the country, to at least have conscience. They have compensated their people. We are not only talking about money, Madam Speaker, we are talking about psychosocial support. They are victims who their lives changed. They lost their breadwinners, Madam Speaker. They lost their parents. They lost their friends. They are still traumatized up to now. We know the act of terror is an act of cowardice, Madam Speaker. And I speak noting that the other day we have been losing also soldiers and other people because of act of terror in the northern part of this republic, and our sympathies and empathies. The fight against terrorism is a cumulative, is a joint venture across the world. We appreciate that the issue of terrorism continues to be a huge challenge across the world. And that is why we have domesticated even the Anti-Terrorism Act, the anti-terrorism laws. We have even the police or the unit that is dedicated to fight terror in this country. We are aware of that. But the conscience of America should have been, they cannot compensate their people and take Kenyans and other nationalities as collateral. It is unfair, it is immoral, it is an abuse of human rights, Madam Speaker. And I'm happy because we are taking a more friendly way. Other nations should have moved to court, Madam Speaker. You remember when the Ethiopian Airlines a few years ago, and I was the chair of JLAC, and we investigated the issue of Boeing 7878 MAX that had technical errors, and we went to Seattle and also Chicago to meet the Boeing managers and other manufacturers, Madam Speaker. Those people have been compensated, and they have been compensated huge money by just a corporation. What we are telling, we want this motion to achieve is to have a sit down, ensure the victims and their families are compensated so that we have value for life. You know, if we allow this, there is no value for life, Madam Speaker. How many children did not go to school because they lost their parents or their guardians that day? Many. How many people still lost their spouses or their loved ones today? Many. But now, the American citizens have been compensated, they have been given psychosocial support, they are okay. This committee, we believe in you to give us recommendation and policy intervention in future. Where Kenyans are lost, we must take the hardball. Because we appreciate that all these, you know, Americans take the hardball when their people are Have you given an example of Gaddafi compensation and the Sudan compensation? These are small countries and small economies, but they are compensating the giant of economies. Madam Speaker, I want to ask the committee to even go and have a sitting with State Department of Justice in America and sit and discuss on how compensation can be done. Madam Speaker, a plaque is not enough to just write a name. We must get other important remembrance structures that the money that should be given to compensation to build even a structure in this Nairobi to remember the 224 victims and more than 4,500 that were injured on the other day, Madam Speaker. So compensation should happen like yesterday. I have believed in the committee. I've seen the membership. I would have wished to be part of the membership. Madam Speaker, I've always said on this floor, all of us are senators, and everybody has capacity and ability to serve in any committee. And when Senator Kavindu approached, I told her, let us also get more people who maybe they want to learn, they have diverse history, so that we can have a well-informed, an important outcome and recommendation that might go into the future, Madam Speaker. So I want to also ask the government, you know, this is a straightforward matter. The Mau Mau case, the government supported. They gave, and you know, the Attorney General's office, Madam Speaker, have what we call mutual legal assistance. And as a senior counsel in this republic, as a senior legal practitioner, there is what we call mutual legal assistance. The Attorney General should step in and assist the committee to ensure any negotiations that are done through mutual legal assistance should be by the forefront. We did that to Mau Mau. I'm expecting also, Madam Speaker, the issue of Koitalel Samoe. You remember the head was taken by the British. There is no compensation up to now. What we have been having is the lip service, Madam Speaker. I brought a petition, and I want to thank the Senate. We recommended compensation to families, like land, like recognition, like compensation. When you go to Nandils, Madam Speaker, Koitalel Samoe Mausoleum, and I want to thank President Kibaki, because at least he gave us money that was used to bring to build a mausoleum in Nandils town. But it is not the standard, Madam Speaker. Therefore, I want to ask, so that the Mau Mau case was done, the Koitalel Samoe, Madam Speaker, and even these victims of the issue of bombing, Madam Speaker, because we have to be honest. We need compensation, Madam Speaker. We have seen the British paying other compensation. It is the government, and I want to believe in Speaker, former Speaker of the National Assembly and the Attorney General, Justice Buni Muturi, to lead negotiations through mutual legal assistance. We are aware our cordial relationship with the US is very well. What the Senate is trying to achieve, Madam Speaker, we don't want to antagonize the Americans. What we are telling them, we have a formal structure, sit with the HADO committee, sit with the Attorney General of the Republic of Kenya, sit with the State Department of Justice of America, look at the victims, give us a compensation. I don't think we are interested in having an adversarial conversation, Madam Speaker. The last point, Madam Speaker, in the last Parliament, and Senator Otsosi is a beneficiary of that session, the government has committed 10 billion for compensation of victims of human rights abuses. I want to believe even as we pursue this matter, Americans should not be the only one paying compensation. We want also the Kenyan government to pay compensation, because these are forgotten Kenyans, Madam Speaker. And I expect that the 10 billion that was meant for reparation, victim compensation, should be reinstated, Madam Speaker. Because we have different types of human rights abuses. When you go, Madam Speaker, to coast, there is what we call enforced disappearances, Madam Speaker. There is what we call human rights abuses, where police have been allegedly killed through extrajudicial killings. There are people who are killed during also post-election violence, Madam Speaker. There is what we call IDPs, Madam Speaker. There is what we call infrastructural evictees. The victims of human rights abuses must be compensated, and it now includes the victims of 1998 bomb blast of 224 victims to be compensated not only by American government, but by the Kenyan government, because that is what the law says under the Bill of Rights. When you want to compensate and right a wrong, is to compensate, Madam Speaker. And therefore, we must look at this 10 billion, ensure. And even I would like to see, even in to rewrite, because there is what we call historical injustices, Madam Speaker. We have communities, at least the Mau Mau case has become a standard where it was listened in London. The Koitalel Samoe, Madam Speaker, I still have them suffering, Madam Speaker. They were returned to a small place where they could not expand, Madam Speaker. There are people who are suffering. The Koitalel clan, both in Kipsigis, in Nandi, and even others in where Suba, And I know you know the history very well because you are neighbor to that region, Madam Speaker. So there are many Kenyans who these human rights months. I want to challenge the committee in conclusion. Please, let us ensure in the next budget cycle, because this one, it can be amended through supplementary, push that we reinstate the 10 billion that was meant to rewrite and compensate an injustice and human rights abuses in Kenya, Madam Speaker. I went finally, Madam Speaker, I went to Coast, and I can give a small story so that we can learn from it. When I was the chair JLAC, and we visited a place in Kwale Social Hall. And when we called for a meeting for enforced disappearances,